Welcome to Lesson 63 of Saxon's Algebra 1 3rd edition. This lesson is going to cover two different topics. One, the product of square roots rule, and two, repeating decimals, which is going to be a little bit of a review. I know you've had repeating decimals before, you know what they are. Let's talk about the product of square roots rule. In Lesson 62, we talked about square roots and higher order roots, and what those meant, and how if you square, say, the square root of x squared, then the answer is going to be x. Well, let's look at this. We can say that if the square root of a times b is really the same as saying the square root of a times the square root of b. Same thing here. The square root of xy equals the square root of x times the square root of y. Or here in fraction form, as long as y is greater than 0 and x is greater than or equal to 0. Alright, so what are we going to do with that? Well, here we have square root of a times square root of b equals the square root of a times b. Here we have the square root of 5 times the square root of 6 would be, we could put it under this square root sign together, and when we multiply 5 times 6, we've got square root of 30. Here, the square root of 27 is the square root of 9 times 3, or the square root, we could also say it as 27, the square root of 27 is 3 times 3 times 3. And remember, when we've got the square root of 3 times the square root of 3, that is actually just 3. So we could circle this pair of 3's, and we could say put it on the outside. And so the square root of 27 is actually 3 times the square root of 3. Alright, so looking at that, remembering that, let's go ahead and do some square root problems. So the square root of 75, if we break that down into our product of primes, we know that 75 is divisible by 5, and it's 5 times 15. 15 is 3 times 5 times 5. Well, I could also say the square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is 5, and then what do I have left? I have the square root of 3. So 5 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 75. How about 200? Well, 2 times 100, 100 is 2 times 50, 50 is 5 times 10, 10 is 2 times 5, so 2 times 2 times 2 times 5 times 5. Alright, I've got a pair of 5's, I've got a pair of 2's, and a square root of 2 left over. When I multiply these two, I get 5 times 2 is 10 times the square root of 2. Alright, and then the square root of 189, I know that both of that number is divisible by 9. It will go 21 times. 9 is 3 times 3, and 21 is 3 times 7. So here I've got a pair of 3's I can bring out, and my answer then would be, I would multiply what's left, 3 times the square root of 21. And that's how you do that. It's pretty easy. Um, some people have a hard time with it, but I really don't think you guys will. If you do, just keep going back to this and um, watch the video over again, see what we've done. Alright, let's move on to repeating decimals. Repeating decimal is a decimal that repeats a pattern forever, a decimal that repeats a pattern forever, and so forth. It has a digit or a block of digits after the decimal point that repeat without end. Note it must be a rational number. It will have the bar notation to signify that that particular number or set of numbers, as in this, is going to repeat. There are some of these that you're just going to need to memorize. And I've listed 4 of them here, and they're the 4 that you're going to be dealing with most in your lessons. Write these down in your notes so that you have them handy. So then the practice problem for this says what fraction, using counting numbers, equals the repeating decimal 0.16, and the 6 repeats. Well, if I went back to my other page, I would see that that fraction is actually 1/6.